Hey, thanks for joining me today for episode 85 of Podcasting Your Brand. I'm your host, producer Jemmy, providing learning lessons for you to podcast your brand. And today I'm giving you my next Podcasting 102 topic, creating your media kit. And I'm joined by my pro podcasting peer guest, Jay Wiley of the Law Enforcement Today talk radio show and podcast. And this episode is brought to you by my own brand, Flintstone Media. Listen in and let's do this. First, starting with one of my daily tips. Hey, it's producer Jemmy. I'm in car line to pick up my son, but I wanted to stop. Oh, I'm already stopped, but I wanted to give you the tip for the day. And it goes off of the tip from yesterday. Well, how do you find the right co-host? How do you find them? Well, a great way to find them actually is to jump on a microphone with them and see how you guys are. So get in, if they have a show, be a guest on their show. If you have a show, invite them to be a guest on your show. If not, then neither one of you has a show yet, then share like a social audio space, like on Clubhouse, do a room together or something like that, or invite them to do like a Facebook Live or join you live in your Facebook group or on Instagram or something like that. The point is to share the microphone and see if you guys have in common number 4 from yesterday's tip. All right, stop by here every day. Continue it back for Podcasting Your Brand. I'm producer Jemmy. So be sure that you are following me all over social media. That is YouTube, that's TikTok, Instagram, Threads. I mean, you name it. Hopefully I'm there, and I want you to join me there so you can see all of my daily tips and that you get them first. And so you can either look me up as Flintstone Media, my company's name, or under producer Jemmy. Either way, you should be able to find me on those platforms. And I'd love to connect with you, and you can ask me questions or request a certain topic on a later episode or as a later daily tip. Just looking to connect with you on social media. It'll be a lot of fun. And another way to connect with me that's a lot of fun is via our one on small group workshops that I have. So if you have a podcast that you want to take from flopped and failing and you want to make it fabulous and fixed, then you can join me. Just go to toppodcastworkshop.com. The lessons that I give on these episodes that I've been giving to my clients over the years, that I give in my daily tips, et cetera, the lessons that I've been giving to straight up Chicago investor to get them to 300,000 episodes. Not 300,000 episodes. Woo, that'd be a lot. 300,000 downloads. All of that, I open up my brain and spill it on the table during those workshops so you can take your show from flopped to fixed. So join me at toppodcastworkshop.com. But okay, on the next episode 86, I'm going to be diving into what it takes to secure your sponsorships. I'm talking well beyond the numbers, okay? Setting the table. And you may be assuming that I'm going to be talking about the media kit in that episode, but no. I'm basically going to be talking about everything but the media kit, okay? Today, I'm going to be talking to one of my friends. He's my gentleman on Clubhouse that I've gotten the pleasure of getting to know for a couple of years now, and we actually are pretty close neighbors. I'm in Boynton Beach, Florida. He's in West Palm. If you don't know what that means, it's like a 20-minute drive, and we're at lunch together. And he has had phenomenal success in syndicating his radio show into a podcast, getting that podcast on all different kinds of other radio stations. It's phenomenal. And what he is so generous at doing is providing his media kit as a sample to any and all podcasters who ask. He does it for free because he's a really nice guy. And so he came on to this show also for free because he's a really nice guy so we can put our heads together and give you the best advice that we can on providing a really solid media kit that represents yourself and your show and is that extra reason why you are going to get that sale and get that sponsor. So I'm so excited. This has been a conversation long time coming. I'm so excited to be joined by my buddy, Jay Wiley from the Law Enforcement Today talk radio show and podcast. Welcome, Jay Wiley. Oh my gosh, John, it is so great to talk to you. I get to talk to you a lot. I mean, a lot. We met on Clubhouse, and you still, to this day, maintained your consistent Clubhouse rooms, and I'm honored that I get to be a regular part of them. And so just real quickly, before we even get into the topic of today or why I wanted you to be my partner to talk about media kits today, talk about the new podcast that's come from the Clubhouse rooms, just to kind of share that with the class, because it's really interesting. It's an interesting tidbit, and then we'll really introduce you.
Okay, cool. Well, Clubhouse, for those who are not familiar, Clubhouse is a free and I think they call it Drop-in Audio Chat app. It's a free program. So we have a room called, a house called Podcast Pros. Jemmy's an integral part of that. Sean Savage, Johnny, Pica, Magnificent, a bunch of other people. And it's a great place to share information, ask questions, promote your episodes, get tips, shares wins. And we do rooms on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And like, for example, the room today is we frequently ask podcast questions because there's a lot of them. And we're all about trying to help people do the things they can to increase their success level, to become more successful in podcasting. And a lot of people are like, well, I can't find any replays or can't take notes. Can you create a podcast version? And Sean said, yeah, let's do that. And now it's a podcast and it's released every Saturday morning.
Brilliant. All about repurposing. That goes back to a couple episodes ago when I talked about how your podcast is content you own. So whether that's content you're pulling from other places into it, or you're taking it and you're repurposing it out into other things, is content you own. So I love that. And I'm going to be talking about all omnipresence and all these kinds of things on future episodes. So fantastic. So now from a human standpoint, my audience knows why you are the right person, because you're a giver. You know, you've had success, but you also give back a lot. That is the spirit of those rooms. It's not, there's not salesy. It's all about giving back. So from a human perspective, super happy to have you joining me. Now let's talk about from a sales perspective, from a badass perspective. Okay. So you are the host of the Law Enforcement Talk Radio show and podcast. And tell us a little bit about the history and the success and where that is now, so we can kind of set the stage for why this media kit has been such a key component of it.
Will do. Well, first of all, I'm broadcasting from the radio studio work. A part of my day job is in radio, and I've been in radio about 19 years now, working full time. My syndicated talk radio show and podcast has nothing to do with doing radio, but we do take lessons and use them back and forth.
Sure.
So the reason I'm bringing it up before we get into the show is the media kit is an integral part of what we do in radio when it comes to advertisers. Not every advertiser is going to want a media kit, but those who do, you got to have it. Right. And it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
So true.
So what I did is I'm a retired police sergeant. I'm not a broadcasting expert. I've not been in this for 30 years, even though I look like it. It's not been that way. I got hurt and retired young. I am physically disabled. And about 8 years after retiring from police work, I began getting into the audio broadcasting space. The early days, the predecessor to podcasts was what we called audio blogs. And I started my first one in 1999. And then we got into podcasting. And I went to a brokered radio station and I did a totally different show. I think it's called Biker Bros. It was ridiculous. But we had listeners worldwide.
You have the mustache for it. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
For those who can't see, you have the mustache for it.
We had listeners worldwide and we paid the radio station for our time and sold our own advertising. And that's a viable business platform for a lot of people. There's nothing wrong with broker radio. If you do a broker radio show, just be the best you can. Don't sound like every other brokered show out there. Sound like you bring an entertaining show to the table. Yeah. So I went to broadcasting school, which you are familiar with, Connecticut School of Broadcasting. I went to nights, and I've been in full-time music radio for about 19 years. And in 2017, I've been playing with the idea of doing a podcast for law enforcement officers, their family members, spouses, people who are interested. And I partnered with Law Enforcement Today. And it was called Law Enforcement Today for a very long time. It's been rebranded Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show because they had a very big Facebook presence.
Yeah.
That's key to
so that
the media
brand
success.
Existed before the show.
Right.
And you partnered with them. Yeah.
Posting episodes of the show organically on their Facebook page, and a radio station heard an episode, listened to an episode and said, hey, they reached out, can you create a radio version? Which we did. Long story short, we're now syndicated. We have 110 affiliate stations across the United States.
I love how that's your long story short. Skip ahead to 110 stations later. Okay, wait. Wow. Can we just pause for that for just a second? Because that's massive. I think when I first started knowing your numbers and familiar with a little bit, I think you were around you're trying to crack 50. Ooh, I remember that. You're trying to crack 50. And it feels like that was like a week and a half ago. It's amazing the growth that you've had.
It does. And radio is a great big funnel. It's a great way to get in front of a large audience and drive traffic to your content, like your podcast, like your email newsletter, like your social media, your website, all those things, which we'll talk about in Media Kit, why that's important and how you can monetize from that. But we broadcast to a lot of people. And the key to that is, Jemmy, is we had to make our content pretty much the same, but we had to make it more entertaining. When I say entertaining, it doesn't mean ha-ha funny. It could be sad. It could be dramatic. It could be tearful stuff. We had to make it more inviting to a larger audience. So what I had to do was get away from the whole expert thing and talk about being a broadcaster. So that's helped my podcast grow. And Clubhouse has been phenomenal for that as well. And I think it's a big part. I can't figure out how, but we've more than doubled radio stations, and we've got, last count, 830,000 plus downloads of the podcast.
Wow.
And a big portion of the revenue comes from radio. So those who put the time and effort to create a podcast, don't think of radio as competition. Think of it as something you might want to expand into.
100%. And I'm already creating like the list of future topics to invite you in to take deep dives on me. Radio syndication is definitely going to be one of them for sure. So absolutely. And then just general partnerships and creativities. And also, just because I know this is something that you've done so well, you've really mastered, I'm definitely going to have you on in the future to talk about using Facebook to grow your show. So if you're a dear listener paying attention, this is a man who knows a lot of information. And so when John gets into the room, myself, Sean Savage, who was a prior guest on a previous episode, these are the minds who are in those Clubhouse rooms on a regular basis. So I'll put the link into the house in the show notes so people can just find it really quickly. But definitely tap into this, because this is the kind of stuff we just dish out at least a couple times a week. So fantastic. Okay, so let's talk about media kits, because I know what an integral part of your success having that media kit has been. You pulled it initially from your experience with radio, and you've been very generous. And, anytime somebody's trying to figure out how to build their own media kit, saying, here, take mine, use it as a template. So what was something that was kind of your first impressions of a media kit in radio, and how has that grown or evolved over time?
Well, the very first impression I got was the help. I've had a lot of people help me. So, and I still get help and instruction for people. But the very first thing they taught me was the media kit is your moneymaker.
Yes.
I'll repeat that. I say it over and over again. If you want to monetize your show, and when we say show, that incorporates a lot of things for me. If you want to incorporate your podcast, your social media, your email newsletter, whatever it is, you're going to have a media kit. It's not a requirement for every deal that comes along. However, if a media buyer that is looking for the best deal possible for their clients, they're going to ask you for a media kit. And if you don't have it, you're not going to get their business.
No, because it immediately looks unprofessional.
Right. It could mean the difference between a couple $100 a month or thousands of dollars a month.
Right.
So if you're not prepared, but the number two thing, and this is what probably the most important thing, was know your audience. What's the purpose of the media kit? And respect their time. If you're dealing with media buyers, they're busy people. Get right into what's in it for them.
It's interesting, because that's such a good point. And I'm remembering back and rolling back the calendar. The very first time that I got exposure to Media Kit was when I started working for Horse Radio Network back in 2017. And back then, because podcasting
you must have been
was
like 12 back then, weren't you?
I probably looked like it, for sure. After this, I'll send you a picture of when I was 26, and I did look like I'm 12. It's a favorite party trick. But anyway, so but when I saw that media kit back in 2017, so much of it was educational, because no one really knew what a podcast was.
Right.
No one understood how powerful the podcast consumption, as far as listenership and how that translates into consumer buying power and all that. No one really knew. So we were taking in information from Edison reports and on consumer statistics and those kinds of things. So thank God for Edison, and putting that really just robust educational stuff into the media kit. I feel like that's less needed now, as people are it takes less convincing that podcasting in general is a good avenue. Still some, but less. But so now it's more just about how do you convince them that you are the right option.
Well, it is, and it's about reach. And you're right about media buyers are far more familiar with podcasting now than they were back
Mm-hmm.
then. And they're
Mm-hmm.
also intimately familiar with the reasons why they want to do it. And
Right.
number one reason why they want to get into podcasting is measurability for their ad dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So what they're looking for is reach. They want to see how many potential people you can get in front of, and then how many leads you can develop. When I say leads, visits to websites, whatever it might be, no one can buy anything on your podcast. They got to go somewhere. They got to go to a website. They got to do something. So it's about how many people can you get in front of, eyes, ears, whatever it might be. If you can show them that we can get people to consume your ad or your client's ad on radio, on podcasting, on audio podcasts, on video podcasts, in social media, in your email newsletter, on our website, guess what? When you start throwing numbers around and you throw numbers of 3, 4, 5 million people, you get their attention.
Mm-hmm.
If you get focused on just how many downloads you get per episode, you're going to lose that battle every time.
Right.
Especially if you are not a big podcaster. Most of us are not the top 0.01% podcasts.
Yes, the conversation has to shift. It has to be about how well your niche of your audience overlaps with their potential customer base, and telling them, imagine if every week I gave you 200, but highly primed, ready to go consumers in a room just listening to your pitch. I mean, come on,
So what I'd love to say is if I get 1 million people into a stadium, let's just say a football stadium in Tampa, and I give you a megaphone, how many of that 1 million people can you convert into customers?
Yeah, randomly pulled from the street.
But I'm generating that kind of exposure.
Oh, that's true. That's true. So it's not randomly.
It takes the focus off you as being a salesman to I'm a broadcaster. And my whole goal is to get as many people as possible to become aware of you and your product.
Yes.
That's why in the beginning of the Media Kit, the numbers you have and the multiple platforms you have are so important. Before we get into there's different types of media kits. I prefer the term one sheet.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to pitch yourself to be on a show, it'd be Fox News or radio or another podcast, you need a one sheet media kit about you. Right. And the reason I'm bringing this up is I'm working with a client right now. They're building their media kit, and it's too much about them. It's too much of a resume about them. That's not the purpose of the media kit. It's you want people to give you money, you got to explain why.
Right. So I think what the most important thing is to explain who your audience is so they can understand whether or not your audience is a good consumer base for them. So I think, let's rewind. Let's really, really simplify this first before we then layer it on top of it. So if somebody says, brand new podcaster out the gate, I don't have enough of an audience. I don't know if I can do a media kit. What is your...
so easy. That's the easiest sale there is.
Yes. Tell us why.
Because you've got no audience. You tell them, listen, every episode I create is going to get bigger and larger and larger.
That's it. There you go.
And I'll be promoting it every episode via social media for the next 3-4 years.
Yes.
So and here's what you're trying to say. Okay, Joe Blow Enterprises, all right? For $100 a month, I'll give you 2 episodes. You'll be baked in. You'll permanently be part of that podcast. You'll permanently be part of the show notes, whatever it might be. 3 years from now, after our deal is done, you're still going to be getting exposure on that ad, and you're not paying me anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the approach you take. You build the future.
Yeah,
boy,
the never-ending
$100 a month, how
return.
can you lose?
The never-ending return. It's
Right.
It's very, very enticing. Very enticing.
Right.
So, in conveying your show is a good customer base for them. I mean, let's start. So the basics. Obviously, show name, show art, show description, right? But then you also, if you do have some good numbers, then put those in there. So if you do have good social media numbers, even if it's not related to your show yet, let's say you just built a social media account, but you're going to be putting the show in front of that audience, then you can still put that in your media kit.
Exactly.
Any awards or anything like that, any other kind of recognition that your show has had, I think all of those can be, there's space for that to be very quickly conveyed as the essential nuts and bolts of the show.
Yeah. And one of the most important things that people lose sight of is contact. Mm-hmm. Sprinkle throughout the page, the media kit. Typically mine is like 7 pages long. Mm-hmm. So you create it I create mine in PowerPoint and then save it as a PDF and then send it. What we don't do, and we'll explain later on, I don't send it to them first thing, and I don't give them too much information. I give them the important facts, and if they want to have a conversation with me, ask specifics about buying power, my audience, that's where I give it to them.
Right.
I prefer to give that over the phone than in written text because so much can be misconstrued in text.
True. And sometimes that's the strategy between the one sheet and the media kit.
Right.
Sometimes that's you send them the one sheet as just the essentials, as a taste, just to gin up interest, know that what we're talking about, and then you get on the phone and you give them the whole package.
Right. Right.
So,
one thing, I'm going to go to the client really quick. One of the things, they don't have big numbers in social media. So and we're going to be talking later on this afternoon, and I've got my notes from viewing her media kit. And one of the things I said is get rid of the numbers on your social media because they're not good. Instead, put all the icons for your social media.
Yes.
And when people say, oh, look, I don't have time to be on, what's the new one? Threads, everybody's talking about. I don't have time to be on Threads. It's just like everything else. Look, I'm not there to consume. I'm there to promote. I want to get in front of 10 more people.
Yeah.
So when I tell people, look, you're going to be in radio, you're going to be in podcasts, you'll be in social media on Facebook in front of about 1.5 million people because we leverage larger pages. Twitter, Instagram, Threads, Gab, Codius, MeWe, LinkedIn.
You're just making up stuff at this point.
I can't even think of the other ones. But all those numbers. Many. So, and Jamie, here's the amazing part, and everybody can do this.
Yeah.
Go to Indeed.com, all right, and type in social media marketing directors or social media marketing creators. I saw one in our area in South Florida. You know what the pay rate was for that?
You know what? We just talked about that because I remember being like, that's about how much I made as a data analyst. That's crazy. It was like, what, 80 to 100 grand?
$82,000 a year starting to $120,000. That's what these companies are paying to get one person. So if you can show a media buyer who represents different clients that you are on all these places and they don't have to spend the time or money doing that, you make yourself far more appealing. So if you're only on Instagram, I would highly advise you get on all the other ones as well.
Right.
And put it
and it can just be putting up the same content. You don't have to make all this effort, but just being on the different places, the media buyer is going to know that at least that you're getting exposure to somebody who isn't on Facebook because you're also on Instagram or you're also on Threads or also, wherever.
Right. Well, understand the basics of advertising. One of the things that we hear quite often in Clubhouse, I hear it often is, well, I don't want to be putting the same thing for everyone to see. Number one, they're not all on the same platform.
No,
the same
they're not.
time,
No, they're not.
Right.
That's
Number
what we forget.
two, if you turn on your television, how often do you see the Coca-Cola commercials?
Yes.
I have to try it first. What does that even mean? I don't even know what it means, but I see it all the time. They want to get in front of many people as possible, and they want to repeat that ad multiple times. And the reason why is top of mind awareness. Most consumers, whether they're buying or just listening and trade for their time, will not react until they see something 7, 8, or 9 times.
Yes. And also sometimes the first time that they see your wonderful post on Instagram, they were compelled to comment back, but then they got distracted by their kid who spilled orange juice, right? So maybe later on when they open up Facebook, they see the same reel. They're like, oh, I can comment on it here. So it doesn't hurt to be in multiple places. It really doesn't. So I also want to talk about, because you mentioned kind of in the beginning of our conversation, that it's really important for the media buyer to be able to kind of have confidence in you. And so if you don't have your media kit prepared, then you look unprofessional. But there's also more to that, because they need to know that even if at the end of the day, like you're saying, they need to know that your audience is their audience. That's the most important thing. But they also need to know who you are, because they need to know whether or not they want to work with you and whether or not you're a good person to represent their brand or even be associated with them. So how much of you do you actually even put in the media kit?
I only put a little bit. And here's the reason why. And when I do, it's towards the end of the media kit. So remember, the priorities for a media buyer, and that's the number one person that the media kit goes to for me, whether it be for an ad agency, and there's plenty of them out there that are doing podcast advertising now.
I get emails multiple times a week.
Right. Then you also have the companies that have media buyers. So their goal is to get as in front of many people as possible for the least amount of dollar.
Yeah.
That's their whole goal. So I want to give them that information first. The about me is later on. What I do include in the about me is a little bit. So if you look at my media kit, it's probably about 5 paragraphs about me. And it tells a little bit of my history so that you get to know me. Yeah. But that is later on. And one of the things is, and this is a term from radio, as I want to try to discourage people from doing is getting into a laundry list of what you think is important. Because so many times people think, well, this is my chance to tell people about me.
Yes, especially because you don't know. You might be thinking you're climbing into that person's mind in the correct way, but you don't really know. One of the things that I did recently, because I didn't want to put too much information about myself, but at the same time, like, oh, but I've been in all these other places, or I've done all these other things, or how do I know what is important to them? So I decided I don't need it to be up to me. Instead, I created a landing page on my website that has all this information. It was already there, but so I had this landing page on my website that has all this in-depth information about me. And instead, I just got a QR code created for it. So I put that QR code in the media kit, and I have just a little bit of information on, just enough of a taste. And then they know that if they want more, they can just hit that QR code. There's also a link that they can click, same thing. Right. But it goes to that landing page.
Have them contact you. Oh, my goodness, because I can't make anything happen until I talk to somebody.
Okay, so then you talked about you kind of going in the back, so setting yourself in the background, setting the numbers in the foreground. Where do we set the explanation of who the target audience is?
More towards the front. So, and this is where I have a line of contention. My target audience, and my show is pitched for radio, is doing for radio what investigations coverage channel does for television. So I go for a much broader audience. If you have a very niche down show, and let's just say
everybody loves true crime.
Right. Let's just say you have a show that's about underwater basket weaving. And don't assume that the media buyer is going to know who your audience is. You want to let them know.
Yeah.
Don't give them too much information. Give them enough. By the way, here's my typical audience listener. This is what their typical average income is. These are their buying. They can research the rest. They can. With a more broader show, listen, if I turn on Yellowstone, which my wife and I love, they're going to see Dodge commercials. We'll see Tractor Supply. We'll see maybe Bush. Right. We'll see some jean companies, some other ones, some boot companies. Then if I turn on repeats of Happy Days, for example, I don't know why I just brought that up. I might see the same Dodge truck commercial.
I went to school with Henry Winkler's niece.
Get out. Fact. Well, here's the thing is they're looking for audience. They're not looking for narrowed down specifics. If you are going to narrow, I got to repeat this. If you have a small niche down audience, remember the value of that audience is that's very hard for advertisers to get in front of that audience.
Yes.
So use that to your advantage. They would pay a
high dollar to get in front of that specific audience.
And some venues, some verticals are very hard with laws for them to advertise too. So, for example, and I don't want to get into whether it's right or wrong, in radio in the United States is controlled by the FCC, which is a branch of the federal government. Marijuana is still illegal in the federal law. So if I run commercials or someone approaches about running commercials for marijuana on radio, it can create a big problem for me.
Right.
But with a podcast, now guess what? I've got an audience that will dig that, and it's a lot harder for them to get in front of their consumers.
That's
so
true.
Why not? Use that to your advantage. Use that in your media kit.
That is so brilliant. That is so brilliant. Okay, so then the last kind of what I think is a cornerstone of what goes into media kit would be the options for how to get involved, the package options. Do you put that in your media kit? How much do you lay that out?
I lay that later on for further conversation.
Okay, so that's more the follow-up information.
The very first thing I do is I email media buyers, and I let them know a little bit about me, a little about my show. We're available. And then the second one, if they respond, they'll usually ask me, hey, I'd like to find out more. Do you have a media kit? Boom. Then you send it to them. Then if they respond and we talk again and say, what are the different options you have? That's when I start laying it out. And I'd rather do that by conversation than I would by writing it down. And here's a reason why. When you walk into a car dealership in the United States of America, one of the first things, and I sold cars for a while, one of the first things they teach you is you ask this question. If I can get you the car you want at the price you want today, are you ready and willing to buy it this moment?
Oh, that is every classic car salesman.
Right. And here's the reason why. Why would they give you the best price so you can turn around and drive 5 miles around and get a lower price on the same car? So, or why would I spend a lot of time and effort with a tire kicker who's got no intentions of buying?
Exactly.
And here's the most important thing. I love the conversation. So if I put in there my base package is $10,000 a month, and their budget is $2,200, automatically they're going to say, well, this is too rich for my blood. This is what I want to talk to them, say, and they go, look, that's more than we're looking to spend. My next question is, what are you looking to spend? What's your budget? Because maybe I can put something together for you that you'll be happy with and I'll be happy with.
Sure. And actually, I think that open-endedness in your mindset, whether or not you don't start with that, you don't lead with that, but having that open-endedness in your mindset, it can be really helpful because you don't want to lose somebody just because they assume that nothing can be done. Like make sure that you're open to something being done. So, okay, so you don't have, the full packages laid out, but I typically do have the package structures somewhat laid out. But then I kind of have a blurb about there are other options available or something like that. But I don't include the price points. So there's a public version that I do have of my media kit. And then there's a private version that I send during the process. So I know you say you don't have any. Do you have any pricing whatsoever? Do you give any clues to your potential sponsor as to what the opportunity is? But beyond knowing jazzing them up about your audience.
When they ask for it, I do. Gotcha. When they don't, I don't, because I just don't believe in chasing potential people away, advertisers away. And
so you focus on getting them really excited.
Right. What I want to build is smart. Here. There used to be a time in my life where I'll use a job as an example. You see a job posting in Indeed, you're thinking, man, I would love that job. So you apply for that job. And it's really perfect with radio. Because the vast majority of jobs I apply for radio, you never hear anything back. You hear crickets. All of a sudden, your phone might ring 3 or 4 months later, and it's a job offer. My goal is no longer about getting hired on that job. My goal is to get an interview. My goal with the media kit and everything else is to talk to the media buyer and get a feel for what they need. Are we a fit? If we're not a fit, I've just wasted your time and my time.
Right.
So my whole goal is top of mind awareness. They may not be willing or ready to do some advertising with me today, but they might be 6 months from now.
That's true. That's true.
It's all about top of mind awareness for me, or as we say in radio, TOMA, TOMA, top of mind awareness.
And FOMO, because if they don't talk to you, they don't even find out what the opportunity really is. They don't know what the packages are. So I think that's brilliant. I never really thought about it that way or that approach that way, but that makes a lot of sense. So, okay, so let me recap. It's all the social media, the numbers, those kinds of things, front loaded. Stuff about you, back loaded. Stuff about the audience, front loaded. Okay, this is really awesome. So we have a really good structure going so far. And I could talk to you. There's so much more we can dig into, and we will on future episodes about the strategy of how to, because you talked about a little bit of the approach and the sales cycle and all that kind of stuff. In the next episode, I'm going to be diving deeper into kind of setting the table for sponsors. I talk about setting the table for sponsorships. So I'm going to be talking a lot about that as a solo episode in the next episode. But I'll be definitely bringing you back on to take deeper dives into a lot of things, including the cycle of presenting this media kit and landing those sales and all of that. I think that is just critically important for people to understand because so a couple of episodes, or maybe it was a couple episodes ago, I actually shared I repurposed a very early episode of this show that was all about sales. And I talked about how if you don't know what your potential sponsor is looking for, you're going to go in there all hot and you're going to say all these wonderful things that to you sound amazing. but to them, it's just a bunch of gobbledygook because it's not what they were looking for.
Right.
So, it's how can we understand what they're looking for and then approach them? So the fact that you talk about having that conversation being so critically important before they even know the opportunity, I feel falls right in line with that. And so, yes, I want to have you back on and talk about all that good stuff. So, John, oh my gosh. First of all, I know that you're very generous in letting people see your media kit as an example. So how can they find your media kit? We'll put a link in the show notes as well.
Go to podcasting2radio.com. That's number 2, podcasting2radio.com. And there's free tips or tools for podcasters. The very first entry is Media Kit. You can download it and also subscribe. If you decide to stay or you decide to leave, that's fine. To our email newsletter, we'll give you tips. You can join us in Clubhouse. We talk about it quite often. And the reason why we talk about it quite often, Jemmy, is because a lot of people don't know. And they don't feel comfortable asking someone, I don't want to sound stupid. What if I'm the only one in the room who doesn't know? People are going to laugh at me.
Or they feel like, I don't have that magical 2,000 downloads per episode, so I'm going to get laughed out of the room.
Most people don't. You and I both know that.
Nobody does.
How many people? Look, I think.
Not necessary, for the record.
Sunday, I had 1,700 downloads. And I told my wife, who I call the boss, I need to find out a way to, this was the podcast only. I need to find out a way to monetize every episode of the podcast, between sponsors, advertisers, CPA, cost per leads, whatever it might be, CPM, programmatic pre-rolls. That's what my number one goal is. But there have been times that we've had advertisers and sponsors that spend tens of thousands of dollars a month. There's times where we do a couple $100 a month. There's times we do in between. But if you are not pushing to make this happen, they're not going to be the path to your door. They're not. Most of us are not going to have a show like the Joe Rogan shows, which they have a whole crew, by the way.
Right.
So if you've got 30 downloads per episode per month, don't hang your head, because that might be the hardest 30 people to get in front of for advertisers.
Oh, that is so true.
Don't assume that your audience is so small that I don't compare. And don't ever assume that you know what your needs of your client, your potential client could be. You talked about this before. The art of the conversation. Sales is something we do every day. We tell, hey, this is why you got to try out this pizza place. I loved it. My son and I had the best time. Or this movie. Guess what? You're selling something.
Yeah.
But you're not getting paid for it.
Yeah.
So if you want to sell, and I'm only saying this because Jemmy is reluctant in Clubhouse to talk about herself. So we always give her a hard time about it. If you are not telling people about you, they are not going to be the path to your door. They're just not. If they're not aware of you, they don't know that I need to do business with this person.
You know, while you were talking, a little bit of a metaphor kind of came to mind. So I'm imagining this field full of pebbles and rocks and things, right? And there's customers in the dirt. There's customers in the dirt. And so a company is looking at this field of rocks and saying, we need to find the customers for us. Okay. Meanwhile, you were the one walking around that whole entire field, priming all of those clients and now all those customers. And now, you know, hey, there's a perfect client for you under that rock and under that rock, under that rock, under that rock. And you're basically laying out a roadmap because you have primed their customers for them.
Right.
And you said, I know exactly who they are. Here they are on a silver platter. For a potential, someone who's trying to sell a product or service, that is massive amounts of gold. So do not undervalue the effort that you're putting in to identify all the customers under which rocks have the customers, because it takes a lot of heavy lifting to do that. And you're doing all of that work for that potential sponsor. So you need to walk into that call with that confidence, knowing that you've put in the work to curate this audience for them.
Know what you bring to the table. And something that you said a couple times that is really important is have multiple media kits, not just one, and know the purpose for each one. This one is for new media buyers that first time, and it's very general about the show, a little bit of information, about what the reach is. You can get into more specifics later on. You can have a one sheet, which is about you. You can do a lot of things. Have it on your website, have it in an email newsletter, have all those things, but it's okay. And make those media kits graphically engaging.
Yes.
Graphically engaging, because nothing is worse than tapioca pudding. Who wants to stare at that very long?
Nobody wants to read your whole no. If you can make a graphic that can tell the exact same information as a block of text, use the graphic. And furthermore, if you can make your media kit similar in branding to your show, like same colors and everything that your show art does, like all those kinds of things, do it. So real quick, actually, this is important because you mentioned
is anything
that
we're doing really quick. I gotta ask you that. We don't do anything real quick. And by the way, we're about 20 minutes away from each other.
I know, and we're about 20 minutes over what I expected usually for these conversations, but about 2 hours less than I actually want to sit here with you, because I could sit here literally all day and talk to you about this stuff. But real quick, I will say that you mentioned that you do your media kit in PowerPoint. In Google, there's a similar app called Slides, exact same thing, same functionality. So you can use Slides. I use Slides forever to create my media kits, and now I use Canva. So just some options real quick I'm throwing out there for people of ways that you can build it. But okay, John, where can people find you, follow you, support you, listen to your show? Oh, by the way, you can find out more about John on my brother's show, because apparently that's who John is making the rounds through right now. Look on your family to be interviewed. So you're recently featured on my brother's show, The Fresh Mix. So I'll put a link to that episode in the show so you can find out a lot more about John, that human side that I love so much that I talked about in the very beginning. You can find out all about that on that episode. But John, other than that, my brother's show, how can people find, follow, and support you?
Well, the easiest way is my website, letradio.com. It's LET for Law Enforcement Talk Radio.com. My syndicated is Talk Media Network. You go to the website, talkmedianetwork.com. We're in the programs there. Podcast Pros and Clubhouse is probably the easiest place to get me, Jemmy, Sean, a lot of other really. Here's the nice thing about people like Jemmy and Sean and Johnny. No one there is pitching to sell you something to get you separated from your wallet. We want to give you information. If you decide you need help, we're here to help. And we all bring different skill sets to the table. So Podcast Pros and Clubhouse is another great way to get in touch with me. I'm on all the social medias, more than I can keep track of. And I tell people, look, I love one of my daughters laughed the other day because I said, slide into my DMs. And she started howling. She goes, what are you doing talking like that in your 60s? What is wrong with you? Look,
I don't know what I'd do if I heard my dad say that.
If you send me a message in DM, I'm always going to reply back to you. And this is something we can talk about later on. Email me, and I give you my email because I cannot keep track of messages in Messenger. Same,
I'm the worst, notoriously.
And if you want to communicate with business people, those who have money, do email. Get their email address. And the last thing I'm going to say is this. Think of your circumstances. For most Americans, an extra $200, $250 a month is life-changing. Yeah. Those people that say I make 100,000 or six figures a year, whatever. Great. Most people go, well, I can't do that. Would an extra $250 a month make a big difference for you? If you're creating the content already, you're spending time, if it will pay your bills and put a little bit of extra money in your pocket so you can take your family out to dinner, then get serious and get these tools because you're doing all the hard work already.
And it's valuable. So get paid.
What the heck is $250? It could change people's lives. When you don't have it and your rent is you're $100 short of your rent, guess what? That $250 comes in handy.
It does. It sure does. Well, thank you so much for joining me today and for coming on camera with me so that now people can see the magnificence of your mustache in real time. So that was a lot of fun. John, you're amazing. You're going to be totally coming on a regular basis. I'm telling it now, speaking into existence, whether you like it or not. Thank you so much, John.
Thanks, Jeremy. Appreciate it.
So seriously, I hope you understand why now. There was no one better to pony up to the microphone with me and talk about media kits. What we just gave you is a masterclass. And what's available in the show notes are the samples. So go into the show notes right now and get our samples of our media kits. And you can take a look at what he's done and what I've done. Our styles are different, but the value of the content is the same. And then you can apply that to your own styling and come up with a media kit that is going to be super strong to help land those sponsorships and help monetize your show and take you one step closer to success, whatever that picture for podcasting success looks like for you. So, oh my gosh, thank you so much for joining me. I hope that, oh, by the way, we're going to get to one more of my daily tips. So I do want you to be joining me also on social media and signing up for my workshops and all that jazz. But what I really want to encourage you to do is to connect with me via email. Send me an email, Jemme, spelled Jaime at flintstonemedia.com, and let me know that this show is helping your show grow. Because what I'm really excited to do is take then your show art and put it on my website and have a click through to your show. It's just extra exposure for you and your show to my audience and whoever else lands on the Flintstone Media website, which is one of the biggest websites in podcasting. So definitely write to me. And if you are just interested in sharing an episode idea, something that you want me to tackle in the future, send that to me as well. Again, my email address is Jemme, Jaime, at flintstonemedia.com. And of course, you can find me on all the social media as either Flintstone Media or Producer Jemme. All right. With all that being said, it's Producer Jemme signing off for now. Remember, the only thing more powerful than your voice is your spirit to use it. So turn that mic on. Now let's get to that other daily tip. Hey, it's Producer Jemme here with your tip. We're going to be focusing this week on mobile podcasting, inspired by my old show, Finding Florida. I love that show. It was a travel adventure show. We're bringing it back, but in Finding Florida, we went around every month, different town, and showed off Florida. Now, what we quickly learned, my co-hosts and I, is that ambiance is good. Too much ambiance is bad audio. So you want to make sure you don't have that. So here are a couple of key things. Actually, it's like a twofer. So number one, you don't want to be dragging around your mixer or your laptop around with you. Instead, find a good piece of mobile audio recording equipment. Now, Zoom, not the connection company, but the audio equipment company, makes a really good series of equipment called PodTrak, Podtrak. Different piece of equipment, really great. So that's a good choice. What I chose was the Tascam DR40. Actually, was given to me as a gift by my friend Scotty. Thanks, Scotty. So Tascam DR40, looks like it's from Ghostbusters, but it's not for capturing ghosts. It's for capturing your voice. And it's really convenient. But what makes the key for mobile podcasting to capture good audio that stays as ambiance rather than bad audio is a dynamic microphone. You cannot use a condenser microphone, otherwise you'll ruin your interview. You'll ruin the audio for your listener. It has to be a dynamic microphone to keep the ambiance where it needs to be, in the background. Come back for more tips, especially on mobile podcasting this week. Podcastingyourbrand.com. I'm Producer Jemme. The Power Moms Network, empowering moms to lift the world.